Hi, my name is Tori Cash and my lesson is on literacy elements. My objective for this week is to describe character settings and major events in a story by using key details. So for our review, the students will be watching a video called Parts of a Story. And during this video we're going to pause periodically asking them, okay, what is a character? What is the setting? And what is the plot? So here's the video. So right there you would pause it and you would say, what is a character? And you would call on a student and say, okay, now what's the character? And they would say a person or even a cat, dog, or bird. Then you would play it again.
The setting is just where they are. Just where they are. The setting is just where they are. Just where they are. The setting is just where they are. Like in their house or in their car.
So you'd pause it and you say, okay, now what's the setting? And they would say probably, the setting is where they are, or they could say a house or a car.
The beginning is what happened first. What happened first. The beginning is what happened first. What happened first. The beginning is what happened first. Like once upon a time there were. The middle part. The problem start. The problem start. The middle part. The problem start. The problem start. The middle part. The problem start. Like when the fishy saw the shark. The end. Just take a look. At the last page. And close the book. The end. Just take a look at the last page and close the book.
Alrighty. And once that finishes, you could ask the students, well, what is a, sorry, YouTube just keeps playing. You'd ask them, what is a plot? And they could say the beginning, the middle, and the end. So, for the purpose of my lesson is to describe characters, settings, and major events in a story using key details. So for yesterday, we learned about key details in a story. So they should already know what key details is, so we already went over it. And today we're going to learn about describing characters, settings, and major events in a story. And then tomorrow we are going to learn about author's purpose. For our motivation today, we are going to read Where the Wild Things Are. And throughout the story, we're going to ask students several questions so they make sure they understand. So here's the title, the cover page, and we're going to ask them, well, what do you think is going on in the story? What do you think the story is going to be about? Because we want them to predict what's going to happen. So yeah, they could talk about the monsters and talk about, you could ask them, well, do you think the story is going to be real or imaginary? You could ask them several different questions about the story. About, predicting what might happen. Alright, so for the first, we're going to make sure we show them the title page, also, Where the Wild Things Are. Show them two wild things. Make sure you show them Max. And you let the kids know that this story is about Max. And we're going to start Max's story. Well, let's go to his adventure. So, the night Max wore his Wild Thing suit and made mischief of one kind. The easiest way would be to have an Elmo or to be reading it to the students, so you would read it sideways. And another. So he's doing mischief and all kinds, chasing the dog with the fork, and And his mother called him a wild thing, and Max said, "I'll eat you up." So he was sent to bed without food. So his mom called him a wild thing. Making sure y'all can see the pictures. And you show him that Max looks mad. And you ask him, well, how would you feel if your mother sent you to bed without food? And several students are going to say, well, I'd be mad, I would be upset, I would cry. And you would say, well, how do you think Max feels based off the picture? And the students are probably going to say mad, because he's looking at her with a frown. That very night, in Max's room, a forest grew. So you show him the picture, and you show him where the trees are starting to grow in Max's room. And you say, do you think a forest really started growing in Max's room? And they're going to say, some are going to say yes, some are going to say no, and you can ask them why they think so. And it just kept growing. Well, and grew. So the kids are going to start laughing, and they're like, well, where's Max's bed? And they're going to say, well, the forest grew over it. And it grew until his ceiling hung with vines, and the walls became the world all around him. So he's no longer in his room, he's now in a forest. So you ask students, well, do you think the forest really grew, or is it just imaginary? The students are going to tell you what they think, and everyone's going to have their own opinion. And an ocean tumbled by with a private boat for Max, and he sailed off through the night and day. So this boat appeared, and you can tell the students, well, the boat just rolled up so Max could take it to a new place. He could go on an adventure. And in and out of weeks and almost over a year to where the wild things are. So he saw a dragon, a sea monster, and he just kept going for weeks and almost over a year. So you tell students, it's a very, very long time, almost a year, whole school year. And when he came to a place where the wild things are, they roared their terrible roars and gnawed their terrible teeth and rolled their terrible eyes and showed their terrible teeth. So they're showing them how mean they're being. They're showing their teeth and showing their big eyes and acting all scary and being a wild thing. Till Max said, "Be still," and tamed them with the magic trick of staring into all their yellow eyes without blinking once. And they were frightened and called him the most wild thing of all. You show how he's staring at them and how they're being quiet and still. And made him king of all wild things. And now, cried Max, let the rumpus start. So, they bowed down, made him king, and they are about to start some mischief. So here, you tell students, what do you think they're doing? And they're going to say, talking to the moon, roaring. And then here, they're swinging from the trees, being wild things. And here, looks like they're having a parade introducing Max as king. Now stop, Max said, and sent the wild things off to bed without their supper. And Max, the king of all wild things, was lonely and wanted to be somewhere someone loved him best of all. Then, all around from far across the world, he smelled good things to eat, so he gave up being king of where the wild things are. So several of the students are probably going to point out that, the monsters, Max sent these monsters to bed without food. Just like his mom sent him to bed without food because he was misbehaving. And now, but the wild things cried, "Oh, please don't go. We'll eat you up. We love you so." And Max said, "No." The wild things roared their terrible roars and gnawed their terrible teeth and rolled their terrible eyes and showed their terrible teeth. But Max stepped into his private boat and waved goodbye. So he waved bye. He's going back home to where someone loves him. And sailed back over a year, in and out of weeks and through days. Let's see what happens when he gets home. And into the night of his very own room, where he found his supper waiting for him. See him smiling? He'd point out to the student. And it was still hot. So you ask the students, have you ever felt that no one loved you best of all, like Max felt right before he left the Wild Things? And several students are going to answer. And then you ask some of the other students, have you ever felt loved best of all by someone? If so, who? And you allow some students to share their time with their loved ones. Okay? For our first activity, the students are going to be doing the story question cube. So it looks like this. It has questions on each side, so the students will roll it. And they'll work in pairs. So, and take turns rolling the die, answering the questions on the worksheet by drawing or illustrating or writing the answers. So students will have this worksheet, so they can either take crayons or a pencil, and they can either write their answer or they could draw their answer, describing each one of the questions, making sure they all are answered. Okay, for our next activity, we are going to be doing the story train. The learners will be working in pairs, but still making their own train. Each student will have a worksheet and cut out their own train pieces and piece them together once they have written the main idea and 3 supporting details. So the supporting details will come from the story. So the students will take this, cut it out, and it'll look like this at the end. Alright, and for our closing, the learner will use the Elmo and the teacher will use the Elmo and remind students which finger represents which story element. So she'll hold up her hand and say, okay students, now what does the thumb represent? And they're going to say main character. And what about this finger? And they'll say setting, problem, events, solution. So we're going to pass out this worksheet and it reminds them each one. And they're going to name the main character by using their thumb, the setting, the problem, some events that happen, maybe important ones that they thought, and then the solution of the story. And then they're going to write the author's message right there, what the author was trying to tell them. Alrighty, and you're going to ask students, name the main characters from the story. So make sure they're naming the main characters. You're going to ask them, what is the setting? You're going to ask them, what is the problem? What is the solution? What are some events that happened in the story? What is important about the story? What does the author want you to know? And then, for homework, the students are going to take home a worksheet and use the story where the wild things are and draw what they would look like if they were a wild thing. So they would draw, and then they're going to pick out what their wild thing name is. So my wild thing name would be, and they would write what it would be. And then I would eat this and this. And a wild thing I would do would be what? And they would name what it would be. And then the next day when they brought their homework back, they would share several, they would all get up one at a time and share what they did, what their wild thing looks like, what they would eat, what they would do. The early finishers will be imagining a forest grew in our classroom, and they will draw a picture showing what this might look like and what everyone in the class would look like. So they would have the worksheet, I would describe it, and they could so the directions are real short, and then they would draw their picture on the bottom of what our classroom would look like if it was turned into a forest, just like in the book Where the Wild Things Are. For the English language learner, they will watch a video of someone reading it. So we would find a video on YouTube. There's several ones out there. And we would play someone reading the story. And I would give them a copy of the book and let them follow along, reading word by word, taking the book. I'm going to put to a page. And, following along, like, word for word. Making sure they are reading each word and understand the word. Then they're going to take a graphic organizer. This one actually, and they're going to work with a paraprofessional or the teacher during center time, naming the characters, naming the setting, naming the problem, solution, and theme. Then the student with a reading disability will either work with another student and reread the story during center time or reread it with a paraprofessional, depending on how many you have at your school. And making sure they understand the story and our story elements. So they're going to use the same graphic organizer as before. For our remediation students, the teacher will work in small groups during center time. She will reread Where the Wild Things Are with them, asking them the same questions that she asked, pointing out maybe the character, maybe pointing out the setting in the story, pointing out that Max no longer feels loved, and that's a problem in the story. And the solution was when he got home, there was warm supper waiting for him. And then getting out the graphic organizer with them and going over it with them, making sure they understand that Max was a character. The Wild Things were a character. His mom was a character. The setting, where the setting was, and what the problem was, what the solution was, and what the author's purpose of this story was. We kind of want to move on to that because we're going to do that tomorrow. And then for our enrichment activity, we will watch the movie Where the Wild Things Are. And once we finish the movie, students will work in groups of 4 to compare and contrast the characters, the setting, event, problem, and solution to the book by using a Venn diagram. So we'll give them this Venn diagram. I'll project it under the elbow so they can see. And I will write here, story, movie. They'll name 2 or 3 things that are different. So 2 things that are different about the movie, 2 things that are different about the book, and 2 or 3 things that were the same in both the movie and the book. Making sure they are writing. We want to start writing complete sentences. And that is my lesson. Thank you.